tendons. We're gonna see my beautiful whiteboard skills here, which is gonna be hilarious.
Yeah.
So.
Where do you want me here?
Yeah, I can be here. So I like to say for tendons, the tendon is like load is both the poison and the antidote. So too much load, overloading the capacity of a tendon will result in it getting irritated, injured, pain.
Okay.
But the way out of it is loading it.
Yeah.
Right? So like to your point, you're like, we start loading that area, it feels better, it adapts, and it starts to get stronger. The challenging part is that most times what happens is like, with tendon-related injuries, there's two ways we see it happen. We have an acute spike in load, so let's say 0 to 100. So you go from not playing basketball for 5 years to playing 5 scrimmages in one day.
Yeah. That's
an acute spike where you overload that tendon and it responds. Or you have like some type of chronic build in load where we're not getting enough recovery of the tendon and it eventually gets overloaded. For you, like with like this, the outside of the knee I think is a little bit different than like what we're talking about on the hamstring, but the hamstring thing seems to be what's really showing up more than anything.
That's happened before. Like that's reoccurring.
So I think what probably happened for you is a little bit of acute chronic where you're loading your hamstring most of the time with exercise, like your strength training, you're playing basketball, you're coaching basketball. So you're probably doing a little bit of this where we're loading the tendon, recovering, loading the tendon, recovering. Then whatever happened in that, you know, that game, which kind of ignited it, but this tendon thing happens outside of that as well. It overloaded that tissue and you get a response, right? And I think the same thing happened with the outside of your knee. We overloaded that tissue and we got a response of pain, fear, discomfort, should I do this, instability. And that's because like your tolerance line drops down. Your body wants to protect you. It wants to say, hey, don't go back in and go really hurt yourself. And so now we don't have as much load tolerance. So now when you do less things that load that area, let's say normally you're able to do heavy lifting, now just when you bend over or you step up on something, you're hitting that tolerance line, you're getting a response sooner. So that's why you feel that like tightness or discomfort here. Maybe originally that's why you're feeling some more of that on the outside because you were loading that tissue more than its capacity because your body wanted to protect you. Over time, just general healing, this capacity line is going to go up a little bit, right? That's why people rest and they feel better. But oftentimes, especially for someone like you who's putting a lot of demands on your body, like we need to challenge that tolerance line more to get it to adapt. And if you don't do that and you just go right back to playing basketball the way you were before, you're going to exceed that tolerance line. My marker's dying. You're going to exceed that tolerance line and you're going to get a response. And so I think what's happening is like, your tolerance line is somewhere here, and then anytime you're loading it in the gym or basketball or whatever, we're exceeding that tolerance line and you're starting to get that response, which immediately starts to make you think like, should I stop? Is this bad? Am I going to hurt myself? Most people do what you were kind of doing and it's like, okay, I'm not going to push through that, which actually ends up inhibiting us from getting to where we want to go. So today my general idea was like, let's see what's driving this. Let's see if there is a strength issue. Let's see like what's going on. And then also like, where is this tolerance line? Because we want to identify where that is. And then we want to work a little bit above that, which is why some discomfort is okay. Because what do you think happens to this line if we load for a period of time just above it?
We adapt.
Just like you would adapt with strength, right?
That's where you kind of want to be progressively.
Right, so that tendon's going to adapt to that load. You're going to have a new tolerance line. And now we have way more room to load in order to prevent that thing from responding. So that's what we need to do because you put a lot of demand on your body. So we need to really build that tendon up. And I think the outside of the knee is doing a lot better, but I think we still challenge that to help that adapt a bit more so that it doesn't become an issue. And then ideally we take this tolerance line and we drive it way up so that you can take on all demands of loading that you want to do with basketball coaching, strength training, right? And we do that with progressively loading it more and then loading it a little bit differently because tendons do a lot of things. They take heavy, slow load really well, but they also absorb and distribute force really well. So think sprinting, jumping, landing, cutting. We want to eventually expose that tendon to more aggressive versions of that so that it adapts to that as well. And then you don't have this fear of like, am I going to re-injure? And your tendon's resilient enough to take on all those loads. So this tolerance graph, as ugly as this looks from my drawing, is like understanding these principles will help you with any type of like chronic related overuse injury that's not acutely damaged. Like this is how I look at every single situation that isn't like I tore my ACL, I tore my ATFL. Like this would apply eventually, but like early on, we wouldn't like push into any discomfort, or we wouldn't do any of that kind of stuff. But most times, which most injuries are kind of like what you're dealing with, this is how we would look at it. So what we need to do is find some of those hamstring exercises that are loading your tendon in a way that is challenging, right? And have you do those.
Nice.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah. Super helpful. Because I feel like there's a lot of injuries throughout my basketball career, and being an athlete anywhere, like you just shy away from those things, and then you go right back to it when it feels good.
Yeah.
And that's something you know we're not taught, right?
So one more thing, like my beautiful drawings on the whiteboard. I'll just show you like the 3 phases of rehab that like I look at. Calm it down, build it up, bridge the gap between like rehab and performance. And performance in your case, let's just call it basketball, right? So this is like the full spectrum. So I would say like you're in a good place. Like calm it down is when you're really acute, super sore, maybe like the day after you got injured, you're in this phase. But now you're probably somewhere like here. You're actually doing a really good job of like building up your load tolerance, you know, but you're still having some type of response because it's like specific. So we want to just start like increasing load in that area here so that we can start adapting this line.
Okay.
But then the key thing, and this is where a lot of people make mistakes, is they skip this phase or they don't have good guidance through the bridge the gap phase, and they go right back to basketball once they get here, because pain's feeling good, you're feeling a little more confident, not as like hesitant, strength coming back, but we haven't exposed you to the full spectrum of movement load that you're going to take on in something like basketball. You jump right back to basketball, and then you end up
right back there,
right back here.
Yeah.
And you get in this cycle of like.
Yeah, and then that's where the mental wear.
Cycle of doom.
Yeah, and then it's like I have a bad.
Like actually,
yeah. I have bad body parts. Like these don't work.
Yeah. So like, where I think I can really give you some guidance is like, how do we load the tissue specifically to build you up, and then how do we expose you to the loads in the bridge the gap phase, which is going to be more plyometric, power based, different angles. You responding to different positions, like you have to respond versus like just do something where you know what you're going to do. So we want to expose you to all of that stuff so that you feel good to go back to basketball. So this is kind of where you're at.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like I got to get even comfortable demoing certain things, doing all that stuff, because it's not just the playing part, right? It's like when I'm demoing a lateral movement and I'm feeling like concerned about it, you know, it's getting all that stuff back. So it's super important. But then that's what you train your athletes to do too. So that's the importance of doing all this little stuff.
Let's try